Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have with me once again Ilana Mercer. Ilana was with us in the past, a couple, 2-3 years ago perhaps. Maybe it's longer than that. I don't know, but it was a while ago, too long ago, to talk about Into the Cannibal's Pot, Lessons for America from Post-Apartheid South Africa. And the title of that book is meant as a metaphor, of course, but it was inspired by Ayn Rand's counsel against prostrating civilization to savagery. But today we want to talk to Ilana about her latest and a very timely book titled The Trump Revolution, The Donald's Creative Destruction Deconstructed. Welcome, Ilana, and thanks for joining me again.
Hi, Jay, and you know that book that you are actually very fond of, Into the Cannibal's Pot, if I recall, is still the go-to book about post-democratic South Africa.
Right, and
I should say post-apartheid South Africa.
Post-apartheid, and
yes.
Democracy isn't necessarily all it's cracked up to be.
Absolutely, exactly. I misspoke.
Okay, so now let me just ask you, before we start to talk about your new book, just a question, a thought about Inside the Cannibal's Pot. Is America prostrating its civilization to savagery, as South Africa has, according to your book?
Well, I just saw that Into the Cannibal's Pot is still a bestseller in post-colonial studies, and its relevance has just increased, especially in the movement of our country into a dominant party state, which is one of the underlying premises of the book, Into the Cannibal's Pot. In other words, the rapid overnight transfer of power from the National Party, the minority to the majority, has ushered in a politics of brute force where a dominant party. We're going that way, dominant party politics. Where voting is actually predicated on a very muscular galvanization of identity politics and race.
That's, I guess the people that love Nietzsche might like that. The philosophers of Nietzsche, the great philosopher, might makes right. Exactly. Mobocracy, some people have called democracy mobocracy, essentially. So if the majority of people think a certain way, then to hell with the minority, I guess, right?
Yep, The Cannibal is the go-to book, and what pleases me greatly, and I don't want to go back there, but the book is really used to help refugees, because it makes an excellent case, both factually and theoretically, for the minority group there.
Very good. Well, that was certainly something that our founders were concerned about, minority rights, and why we were never supposed to be a democracy. We were a republic, and so somehow with Woodrow Wilson we got away from that, I guess, and we make the world safe for democracy, so that I guess the world can self-destruct, it seems to me. Well, anyway, I'm not supposed to be editorializing.
Donald Trump has not liked that concept of making the world nation-building and exporting democracy, our form of democracy. So in that sense, he's been quite firm,
Sovereignty, the sovereign rights of nations, right, which seems to be another topic, another thrust away from the notion that countries have sovereign rights. Trump stands to be more for sovereign rights, does he not?
And America first, yes, and I know that... You are somewhat in trepidation about populism, but it doesn't always have a bad connotation.
Yeah. Well, we certainly talked last week to Lou Rockwell about it, and one of the things he said was he's no big fan of Donald Trump, but one of the things he does like about him is he seems to have all the right enemies.
Well, the premise of my book is really it elevates the argument. In the sense that it's not so much about policy, but it's about process. We've tended to speak about corruption, and you asked me about that in the discussions we had prior to this interview, in a very fragmented way before before Trump. We'll point towards the revolving door that sees politicians, when they die, political death, go to lobbyist heaven, and that's our idea of corruption, but Trump, via his positions and brute honesty and in absolute flouting of political correctness, has really got this entire intertwined machine oscillating. And they're still having this grand mal fit. And you asked me a little bit about the entrenched system that I delineate in the book. And
yes.
I talk about it's not the tit-for-tat politics, who's more corrupt, the Dems or the Republicans, but you really have an enmeshed punditocracy, intelligentsia that's not very intelligent. You have slick big media and religionist politicians, Dems and Republicans, and all of them are convulsing in one big grand, frenzy. So, in a sense, Trump, and he has achieved this already, is acting like what I call in the book, in the Trump Revolution, a political Samson who's threatening to bring this how would you say, den of iniquity crashing down on its patrons. And we liberty lovers mustn't take for granted what he has achieved so far, because to get this ossified evil system shaking and shuddering as it is, basically all the forces, this alphabet soup of acronyms that stand for statism, if it's GOP, DNC, RNC, throw in one, my friend, NRO, NATO, WTO, NAFTA, they are all the people who are vested in these statist arrangements that bypass the people are actually rising on their hind legs, and not for truth, but in defense of their realm. So my book, The Trump Revolution, is really a book about the process of Trump and this kind of achievement. And he's challenged the political players nationally, internationally, and they are all frenzied. So he has achieved a great deal so far. And in a sense, this is good for liberty, and that's why I call this creative destruction.
Mm-hmm. Well, he certainly does have the establishment shaking in their boots, no question about it. And you just have to wonder what kind of games will be played to try to stop him. I think it's very interesting to note, as we speak today, that the Rasmussen poll, and I haven't looked at a lot of different polls, but that's one I know that's had a pretty good track record, actually has Donald Trump slightly ahead, I think, by a point or two. So I've been very sort of pessimistic about his chances, not really been terribly enthusiastic about him, but I hear what you're saying. The destruction of this system. The question that I always have is, will there be something better, or might there be something even worse that comes afterwards?
Well, I don't think we can predict the future, can we?
No,
but
not
all
so
we
easily.
know is this man has done single-handedly, because never has there been an entire system against one person, has there?
No.
And single-handedly, he has begun prodding all these complexes, which I address in the book, whether it's the conservative complex, which so far has been neoconservative entrenched. And that is pretty frayed. And believe me, I'm in the trenches, having written a weekly column, I would say a superb weekly column for almost 2 decades, which hasn't exactly ingratiated itself on libertarians. I do find that the neocons and assorted websites which were very close to our opinion are, welcoming me, touch wood. So there has been considerable change, and we cannot disregard it or discount what he has done so far. But essentially, this is a book about, Trump Revolution is a book about process, less about policy.
Sure.
And you asked me essentially a very interesting question about something that piqued your interest, was the play-by-play is the Clinton way, the cash, the Clinton cash. And so we tend to get bogged down, Jay, by these tit-for-tat arguments, rather. Who's worse, the Dems or the other ghetto or the other gang of predators, right? And Clinton cash, for me, really falls into that paradigm, let's follow the trail of evidence. It's horrific, of course it is. But equally, if you follow Genghis Bush, if you follow those breadcrumbs to the palace of Prince Bandar, haven't we heard of that of late, of Saud,
Yes.
then Bush and the Republican establishment is just as bad. I mean, the 9/11 families should be as disgusted at Bush for finessing the role of the Saudi government in 9/11 as the Benghazi families are with Hillary. So for us, it really has to be about transcending the evils of the duopoly and to look beyond this tit-for-tat argument. And I think systemically, the guy has really threatened them.
No question about it. I think before we go any further, I failed to mention when I introduced you, your website is Ilana Mercer, ILANAMERCER.com, Ilana Mercer, and your blog is barelyablog.com, right?
Yes. And
is that where people should go to follow your work and also can follow the trail to buy your book as well?
And yes, and follow it to Amazon, and certainly follow me on Twitter and on Facebook, where you and I are connected. And I am the author page is a paleo-libertarian author, Ilana Mercer, and that will be great to hear from your listeners.
Ilana, I at first took Donald Trump as kind of a joke when he ran with the other candidates in the Republican Party. I quickly started to see him catch on, as everybody did. I mean, was it a surprise to you at all?
No. I liked what he was doing from the get-go. I have this, this is why I was ostracized on, let me see, the 19th of September 2002 by the Republicans, who initially embraced me when I appeared on the scene because I came out against the Bush war, which many even lighter libertarians were for. Not our hardcore friends, of course. So I saw this coming. I was very excited about what he was doing, especially as a person who was unhindered by the super PACs. I think what's very important is for libertarians to distinguish between, and this I find lacking in libertarian thinking about Trump, is distinguishing the incentives that underlie his impetus and his rivals. In other words, we need to look at what motivates someone in the private sector, and this is what we're good at, right? Mm-hmm. And what are the incentives that propel the inverse and the corrupt and the obscene incentives that propel the political class, right? Mm-hmm. So I was quite excited about that because I saw none of the political correctness and the super PAC reverence hindering this man. Mm-hmm. I almost saw a sort of gruff noblesse oblige in the, maybe in the tradition of great American industrialists. We have that in our tradition.
Mm-hmm. What do you think incentivizes Trump? I mean, certainly he doesn't need the money. The Clintons have, somebody pointed out that the Clintons were the first presidential family to really get rich following the presidency. Bill Clinton wasn't especially wealthy before. We had other presidents. I think Roosevelt was quite wealthy. Kennedy, of course, was. The Bushes have been, very, very wealthy, having their banking connections going way back. But, the Clintons they come in not wealthy, and now they are very wealthy, supposedly. What drives Donald Trump?
Well, I think this is, again, something that I don't seem to be able to get my libertarian friends to understand. I mean, he's a man operating from the private sector. I mean, this is not a politician, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, every libertarian worth his salt should be capable of distinguishing political incentives from those motivating a private sector actor. Mm-hmm. So when all of his rivals, which he beat, were look, Trump is not a perfect paragon of free market capitalism. We know that because we don't have free market capitalism. He's a survivor, and sometimes he wades into very dirty waters, very polluted waters. But he has grown rich by building resorts, which he has never forced you and me to frequent or to pay for, right? Mm-hmm. In the tradition of the founders, he has even forsworn a salary were he to be elected. Has that been published at all or publicized?
No.
No. I mean, can you imagine if Bush said, I'm giving up my salary, I'm working for you? It would be emblazoned across the skies, right?
Yeah. Well, certainly if Obama did that or Hillary did that, certainly.
These people are in it in order to establish their fiefdoms in politics. And his incentives are exactly the opposite. So to win the primaries, he pledged, how would what we say, a chunk of his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. He did not pledge a chunk of super PAC wealth, right?
No.
So simply by looking at these vast differences in incentive structure, we have to concede that he is different. At least right-thinking libertarians must understand that whether you like him or not, he is morally superior to a politician.
You know, Ilana, much has been made, and he's been demonized for saying that he could get along with Vladimir Putin. Well, what would be so wrong with that? What would be so wrong with having a trading relationship, a good relationship, a commercial relationship with another country like Russia? It could perhaps actually help us to be friendly. And if you had free trade between the two countries, I can just imagine that Trump probably is saying, I wouldn't mind building a hotel or two in Russia, starting in Moscow.
Yeah, and don't we love that? Or at least, Yeah, I mean, as libertarians, we love that, of course. We don't want, and I think the average American, and this is the Trump populists, don't want to see war with Russia, and, they're not interested in that. They want to see peace at home, comity with the nations of the world, commerce that is fair, right? And this is what appeals to Trump. And even if they don't understand liberty, because that worried you too when we were discussing, in the build-up to you said that American people don't understand liberty and gravitate towards dependence. But even if they don't understand liberty in the abstract as we do, they do understand what makes for safe neighborhoods, less murder by Muslim and migrant. They understand these simple things, and these things make up for organic liberty,
Exactly. Well, what do you think the propagandists on the other side, the Hillarites, are going to do? I mean, I can remember. I'm old enough to remember. I don't suppose you are, Ilana. I think you're much younger than I am. But I remember Barry Goldwater's campaign and the mushroom cloud, and of course, Barry Goldwater was going to get us into World War III, and I think they're trying to do the same thing with Trump, perhaps. They're probably trying to say that Trump would be the more dangerous because he doesn't have any foreign policy experience and he's a madman, and I don't want him. I don't want his finger on the button. I've heard Hillary say so. What are your thoughts? Where do you think the establishment's going to come after Trump? What do you think they're going to try to do to stop him?
Well, as I say, in the Trump revolution, the toss-up really is clear, in the 2006 election, and that's between submitting to the Dems and their war on whites, on wealthy and Walmart, right? Or we could be bedeviled by a regular Jeb ! Republican, and he was about a war on the world. Russia, China, Assad, the Ayatollahs, you name it, he was going to war on them. And in the case of Hillary, it's the perils of both. Hillary will combine all that, all the above. So Hillary is by far a very dangerous candidate. So I think that I think Trump's foreign policy speeches have certainly allayed the fact that he's far more moderate than she is. Of course, I don't like his promise to bomb ISIS, and I would venture, if you want to stop murder by migrant, let's say by Mexican migrant, do you bomb Mexico? No. So by logical extension, here you have the Bush doctrine again in operation. Oh, in order to prevent them from coming here, we need to bomb them over there. How has that worked? And
I think you certainly could make the point, as Ron Paul did when he ran for president, that the reason they're over here is because we are over there, and I think that makes an awful lot of sense. But it seems to be
absolutely partly the case. Partly the case.
Ilana, with just a minute left, this isn't fair to you. We should have given you more time, but
Oh, I can come on again.
Well, we have to do that sometime soon. But just to get an idea, now I've lost my train of thought. Any closing comments you might want to make with just a minute left?
Well, I think the book will appeal to all your listeners because it's not a partisan book, The Trump Revolution,
for sure
published,
not.
by the way, in June 29th this year. But it's a pro-freedom work, and basically it speaks to any independent thinking individual because as a paleo-libertarian, I do not root for this or the other political faction, but for individual freedom, and that has to be optimized within a decentralized organic system. And I think what the Trump Revolution achieves is to deconstruct the process of Trump, not the politics so much of Trump, but the process, and commend this candidate for really beginning to poke at this incredibly corrupt political system that we labor under, and that is a good thing.
We'll have to leave it go at that. Ilana, thank you so much for being with us. We'll have to do it again sometime soon.